at least good morning if you're in California or nearby California. Welcome to our Foldscope Super User Live Workshop. Amy Downs, local teacher, she's in Visalia, California, is going to be talking about 5 ways to Foldscope in the classroom. And I will let you take it away, Amy, because you got a lot to talk about today.
Okay, well, thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Whatever time zone you're in, it's 10 o'clock here in California, so that's not too early or too late for a Saturday. Anyway, I just wanted to share 5 ways to use a Foldscope in your classroom. And the slide deck will be available. I have lots of links on there for you to kind of dive in and look at some things that I've connected. And then feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. I'm active on Twitter at Amy Downs Amy. And I'll be happy to connect and collaborate with you. So in starting out, in preparing for this presentation, I wanted to kind of give an overview of different ways that you can use a Foldscope in your classroom. I teach 7th and 8th grade science at ELA and production studio at a charter school. And my background is really in elementary education. Because I teach more than one subject, I'm allowed to do that on my multiple subjects credential. But for most of my teaching career, I have taught either 5th or 6th grade, but been in and out of different, grade levels, student teaching and various projects. So I'll try to explain things with the lens of having something maybe be at a lower grade level or a higher grade level. So first of all, I've got the makerspace, sending the Foldscopes home with kids, and then going over the National Geographic Next Generation Science Standards, project-based learning, and citizen science, which I really couldn't separate into 3 other separate ideas. So those are kind of merged together. So first off, if you have a makerspace in your classroom or a makerspace room at your school, using Foldscopes is a really easy way to integrate microscopy into your classroom and introduce it to kids. And you can start with prepared slides, and then helping them learn to focus, and then work your way into having them make their own slides. One of the projects that I did at my school was we just went out onto the campus and collected things to Foldscope. So that time of the year, there were some flowers blooming. And then I particularly like this picture because this little girl has bark. And I'm like, those are the things that kind of kids discover as they're working their way through learning about Foldscopes and microscopy, is some things you're not going to be able to see. So that led to some really good discoveries on their own for the kids. Another thing I did was I reached out to some other schools in my area, and we got connected on a Flipgrid. So if you have Flipgrid or access to Flipgrid, it was a great way for the kids to tell about what they found at their school, little things that they made their slides from and talked about it and shared that with each other. So that was a great way to collaborate. One of the things that I discovered is that the kids make lots of slides, like lots and lots of slides. So I had run out of the slides that come on the Foldscope when you start to fold it up. So there's lots of different ways that you can make your own paper slides and just use transparent tape. So we had made a template on cardstock, but really, you don't even have to have a template. You just have to have some things you can just put right in between and not even make a slide. But we just made lots and lots of slides. So depending on what the kids came across and found, they worked on that. And then also sketching and taking notes, just kind of not very structured at this point in my Foldscope journey. But the kids just naturally wanted to draw and doodle. And then another thing that I did was we worked a lot with fibers, strings, and yarns, just to get used to focusing and then taking pictures, because my school has a cell phone set that we use for AR and VR that we just tape the coupler onto so that the kids could start to capture their images. I know some classes have iPads. The only thing is that for us, our iPads, the case had to come off. So you just have to be careful if the kids are walking around with devices with no cases. Our cell phones for our AR and VR cart, they don't have cases because they won't fit in the like Google goggles. So they were pretty used to being careful with them. And then we kind of captured all of their learning and turned it into also a little bit of a writing project where the kids wrote about their what they discovered. The next area is just kind of going over sending home the Foldscopes with the kids. So I had a little club that I worked on after school, and this little girl came back in after I sent the Foldscopes home with them. And she's all, Mrs. Downs, can I Foldscope slime? And I'm like, you can Foldscope anything. And then she proceeds to take out the slime from her backpack, and it had these stars in it. And as slime was, you know, super popular not too long ago. So she then takes all of this out of her backpack that she made at home. She'd done the drawing and she had made the slides, and I was just so blown away because it was just something that she was really interested in, seeing what it looked like. She also made a little slide of some sand. And so we had a really good conversation about what we were looking at, because inside the slime are those things like, will they decompose? Will it, you know, is a part of a microplastic that is harmful to the environment? And when you're done with the slime, how are we going to throw it away? So it was really a great conversation that I didn't expect. So the second way you can definitely use your Foldscopes is to just let the kids be explorers with the Foldscopes at home. Okay, and then that was the other picture. I just love the way she did her little drawing in her book. Okay, so the next way is like with the next generation science standards. Where we are in our area, we move through our curriculum with the next generation science standards. So in using Foldscopes, another way that I started out was, that is also probably pretty common to use Foldscopes in your classroom would be with plant cell structures. So we start with a phenomenon, and I just used this 5E lesson plan, then move through to engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and then do some kind of evaluation. And so I captured this image here of the stomata, which was new for me. I hadn't done that before, and I was looking for, you know, what should I be looking for? I used the microcosmos and searched up things on the Foldscope website. I called my my science mentor here in the school district, who's our STEM director. I sent him pictures. Is this it? Is this it? So I just want to encourage you, if you're looking at something and you're not sure what it is, reach out to experts, because the amount of help that I've had has just been phenomenal for when I start to look at something and I'm not sure what it is. So this particular video just is a quick lab on why those little bubbles are happening inside the water. So you could launch it from there, and then I created some notice and wonder slides that the kids could reply on, or of course you could print them as well and use paper. And then more information here about helping them understand what's going on inside a leaf with photosynthesis. And then here are more, some more ideas with just letting them explore and sketch and use what's popular in our area, which I love to use, is called AEGYPTI, which is a library of templates that you change the content, but you keep the template the same. So for this one in science, I used the sketch and tell. which is kind of obvious. Or if you're capturing pictures with your cell phone, the kids can add in a picture and then tell about what they're seeing. And then just kind of some basic things that are pretty common in elementary classrooms with the onion cells. And then the thing that really kind of was a big aha moment for me is that when I was searching for resources to use project-based learning or citizen science type ideas, I came across this National Geographic unit on carbon trackers, and it's phenomenal. You do not have to recreate the wheel. You can, you know, find things that are already out there, good quality resources, and integrate them with Foldscopes. So everything here is really launched from the idea of how photosynthesis happens inside a leaf. Just from taking that leaf and capturing some images of the stomata and how that part works. And from there, you can just go through this kind of idea, and it is a pretty big unit, but at least it can give you some ideas of ways that you can add in that your photosynthesis units, which you probably already have something connected to that in a life cycle or a life science unit that you probably have anywhere from like kindergarten on up. So it's really amazing the resources that you can use with your Foldscope, just starting with something so simple. Okay, so next, this is an entire library of articles from Newsela, and Newsela is a platform that takes articles and levels them in grade level reading abilities. It's free, but they also have paid subscriptions. So I have, at my school, we actually subscribe to Newsela, so we get all the features that it has available. But I went ahead and put the link on there in case you're looking for current, relevant, up-to-date content on photosynthesis. This is called a tech set. So that, I hope you're able to get that link in the tech set if you're not, if you don't have the subscription, just the free version. When I use Foldscopes with my kids, I like to put just one slide for them to go at their own pace so that they could watch the videos. Once the Foldscopes are assembled, you're pretty much, you know, up and running. But if for some reason you have a student that needs to make another one, or maybe they have to take it apart because maybe they're not able to view it correctly, I like to take these resources from the Foldscope website and just kind of put them all in one place for the kids. This is just the minimum, like just getting started. There are so many amazing resources and videos on the Foldscope website. I just kind of peeled off the ones that would fit for what the kids would need in the middle of actually Foldscoping with for photosynthesis. Okay, so moving on, my next one is kind of combining project-based learning and citizenship and kind of moving a little bit further into projects beyond just your basic science lessons. So I wrote this kind of graphic organizer for a presentation I did earlier this spring on what else can I use Foldscopes for? And so I kind of thought back to the different things that I'd done in my classroom or touched on or actually had planned on doing, but didn't get a chance to completely do everything this school year with the shutdown, is connecting it to project-based learning. I'll talk a little bit about the global goals. Oh, I got a misspelled word there. The National Geographic resources, project-based learning, and then kind of three big ideas with pollen and pollinators. I kind of went over plants already, in insects, of course, and then citizen science with the Asian citrus psyllid, which is a local problem for us, bees and mosquitoes. So the idea is that, you know, no matter where you live, there's going to be a global problem in your backyard. So you know, years ago, before we were really connected and being able to collaborate outside of the four walls of our classroom, it just seemed like global problems were in other places. They really weren't our problems. They were problems that happened in other countries or problems that happened, you know, in another state. But really, this has really helped me expand as an educator that our local, we have global problems here. So this particular standard, where you're connecting a local issue to science education, if you use the next generation science standards, I kind of chose these three areas because I feel like it really helps to merge the practices with analyzing data, collecting data. Creating an argument is huge, like, you know, arguing for what you're looking at in science and from evidence, which can be from something that you've foldscoped or researched and read. And then kind of like all living things are made of cells, just like this overarching idea. And then cross-cutting kind of goes into the concepts that what you see on one scale, you can't necessarily see on another. So I really feel like these are ideas that are challenging for teachers. It's challenging for me to like, how can I meet these standards? And I feel like using Foldscopes really help to give a concrete things the kids can participate in and engage in. So in our area, one project that I've worked on for a few years with another teacher who partnered with me on this initially at a school here, her name was Julie Cates, was this Asian citrus psyllid, which is an invasive species. So we live in an area that's an agricultural region where we have commercial citrus groves, but in California, having citrus in your landscaping is very common. So this invasive species could be in somebody's backyard citrus. So in our area, up and down California, you see these government traps that they take samples from to see where the psyllid is. So just in researching this project over the last couple years, it makes the headlines quite a bit. These are just from our local areas because the Asian citrus psyllid carries a disease called Wanglongbing disease that they're been working on discovering a cure for, which they're just this last week came out with some ideas that they really think are going to be positive in helping with that, controlling the Asian citrus psyllid. But as citizens who have citrus in our yards, we have to learn how to recognize that. And so for a project, I reached out to Dr. Mark Huddle, UC Riverside, and Dr. Beth Grafton Cardwell here. She works at a research center not too far away from where I am actually, and asked them to help me because some of these things, there's just, you know, these resources aren't in my curriculum, but it was something that I really wanted to do. So she was kind enough, I'll get back to that in just a second. I'll talk about the geo-inquiry process. So I worked with, on a course called the Geo-Inquiry Process with National Geographic, and helped to tie in ideas with how the geological perspective plays a role in scale and where that space is, where that's happening, whatever that you know, invasive species, where is it, why is it there, and why should we care? So in this resource here, it'll take you to some principles. There's a great map that I use with my students to help tie in geography to, okay, if this is a non-native species that's here in the Central Valley of California, where did it come from? How did it get here? And just kind of tie in those big ideas with how globalization affects us all. So from there, I was working with Dr. Beth Grafton Cardwell, and she made these slides for me to use with my students, because in taking that idea of a project-based learning or citizen science, there has to be like some kind of call to action. So teaching the kids how to identify the unique wing pattern of the Asian citrus psyllid. And if they see that on their own trees, that they would know to call a 1-800 number. So we were able to tie in life science, science standards, and a local issue that's really a global problem. So it kind of wraps up with the kids knowing that they should call this number, and knowing the reason why it's so important economically and culturally here in California. So moving on to the next idea with project-based learning is there's a lot going on in the world with bees. So I was lucky enough when I was putting this together this week that it's just kind of crazy how your eyes start to see things that maybe you wouldn't have seen before. And I had a little bumblebee that had passed away in my driveway. So I collected him up and saved him to Foldscope and kind of share the idea of using, if you find a bee that's dead, or you can also use pre-made prepared slides as well. So in this, it kind of follows the same idea with the 5E, and this is a little bit more broad with pollen and pollinators, because your lower grade, like I believe these are second grade standards, just understanding the role of pollinators. So being able to look at pollen with your Foldscope, and then actually be able to if you have a bee, or you come across a bee, or use a prepared slide, and to connect those ideas for kids to actually explore, I think that just makes science so much more engaging. Most primary grades, I believe, have some unit where they might have the Luna moss that they go through the life cycle with. So this would fit well, I think, for primary students. So again, it starts off with this beauty of pollination with this video, and then launch into some more videos and some what types of pollinators there are. And then as another activity, if you have like a school garden, or even a place at your school where you could build a bee hotel, or even have the kids build them and take them home to learn about why would we have bee hotels? Why do we need these pollinator gardens? And it just kind of broadens that, you know, traditional unit that, again, I think a lot of teachers have or have taught, but it just adds in this, this hands-on exploration that kids can do. Again, here's more articles, adding in infographics, the life cycle of a plant, some writing, places where the kids can write and reflect and collaborate with some digital tools. And then finally, I had come across another tech set, and I'm sure there's many out there. I just happen to use Newsella a lot. And it was what's the buzz about bees? And this educator had put this together about the problems facing bee colony collapse. And so again, bees are everywhere. And this idea about the problems that bees are having and the collapse disorder is really a global problem, just able to tie that in and expand this idea that is just more accessible and hopefully more understandable for kids. So here are some pictures of my little bumblebee from my driveway. When I first started taking pictures of him, I noticed that he probably had pollen on his back and on his legs. I don't know how long he had been out there. So I took tape and took tape off and put the tape on the bee to get the pollen off. I'll show you that slide in just a second. This is part of his wing. And then this is part of his wing. And then that's the one that had like a little hair and probably a little piece of pollen and other like little black specks. So when I start to Foldscope, I'm like, I'm not sure what I'm looking at. So I just took these pictures yesterday, and I would definitely reach out to either the Foldscope community or, you know, someone who could help me explain more from what I'm seeing, because like you start with one thing and it just dominoes, question after question after question when you start Foldscoping, which is great for kids. Okay, moving on from bees to mosquitoes. Just this week, I came across a news report. Bakersfield is probably about an hour and a half from where I live. Even though we have problems with mosquitoes where I live, this was just like the most recent one on the problem with mosquitoes and how much worse this summer's problem is than last summer. And both of these mosquitoes are invasive to our area. And teaching kids about mosquitoes and what they can do, a call to action on why it's important to eliminate environments around your home where mosquitoes breed is really important. So one of the things I did last year was I combined the Global Read Aloud, which was a book here called A Bridge Home, and the Global Goals Project with a unit that I did on helping kids learn about the citizen science and reducing mosquito populations. So this link here, the Global Read Aloud, kind of, it just so happened that it was a book. I don't want to be a spoiler alert. There might be people out there who haven't read it or have read it. You know what happens in it. And the setting and everything is just so important to protect ourselves about and how many people die each year from mosquito-borne illnesses. And it just ties in reading. It was based on a true story to your science. So at the same time, each year, there's a book that comes out that you can join in reading. The Global Goals Project, this is another place that you could join. And what you do is you sign up and then they let you know which of these goals you will create some lesson on to help teach. Well, I got goal number 3, which was good health and well-being. So it just so happened that through my project, you know, you're able to collaborate with other classrooms and share, and you kind of go through a series of lessons. It just so happened to be the same time of the year that we were reading the book. So we learned about mosquitoes in science along, and I attached here a National Geographic resource, how to prevent the spread. And it just made it more relevant for kids because we were reading a story along the way. We were really learning about characters and setting and the environment, and in a place that's very, very different from where our kids live here that I teach. So this was just kind of a snapshot of a few of the key things that the kids did that they learned about. And the most important being that leaving water, not emptying little water pots, especially in the spring here, or even from sprinklers. It doesn't really rain where we live in the summer, but we do water our yards. And so even learning that about checking your yards from sprinkler water that might be pooling in places around your yard that you're not aware of. So I got a mosquito. I had saved a mosquito. I put it in my refrigerator, and I didn't want my family to accidentally think it was something that they should, well, of course they probably wouldn't because it kind of looked gross in there, but in a little container because I wasn't quite sure how to preserve the mosquito. And I might have waited too long because my mosquito pictures really aren't that good, but there are lots of really good mosquito pictures out there. So this is one area I'm still working on, getting better mosquito images that I Foldscope myself. But again, you can use prepared slides or look on the microcosms where other people have posted information about those species of mosquitoes that carry those diseases. Okay, and then up next is I have really wanted to dive into this idea with project-based learning and citizen science on microfibers. So I came across this on, this was just on Twitter this week about, and that's the link when you have the slide deck, you can click on it, or maybe you saw it, where they invented a filter so that when your laundry water is leaving your washing machine, that it doesn't take what sheds from your clothes and then gets out into the environment. So I have also connected the National Geographic article on microplastics. So if you're a teacher at any grade level that has worked on reducing your plastic footprint, plastic going out into the oceans, what's happening with our animals and environment in the ocean, like you could tie this in so easy with Foldscopes. So what I did was I took just 100% cotton. This is like some good ideas that you could do with kids to compare and contrast. So this is just the fabric that I used. And I think that, you know, when I looked at this, I've seen posts of the different kind of filters that masks that we're wearing because of COVID-19 and the N95 mask. So like this type of foldscoping activity, kids are gonna have fabrics at home that they can look at. You could bring fabrics into your classroom depending on whether or not you're gonna be having face-to-face or distance learning. Some of these Foldscope ideas are just simple again and easy, but yet connecting to such broader issues in our world. So one of the things I like to do so I don't forget what I'm looking at when it is like this, I took a picture just of the fabric. Plus I think it helps communicate to your audience, you know, even if you're doing that for kids or kids are doing maybe presentations or creating projects for the other kids or for you. And then to take a picture of what the slide looks like and labeling your slides. I highly recommend that. I was told to do that early on and I didn't. And then now I do it all the time because it's very helpful because you think you're going to remember what you made, but you might forget. So then I have 100% wool. So I went ahead on this slide and I put 3 things on the same slide. This is a little piece of wool fabric. And when I look back at these, I realized I didn't take a picture of the wool fabric itself, which was a plaid, kind of a brown plaid fabric. And then my niece has a project for school. She's an FFA, and I don't have any. I grew up on a farm, but I don't have any lambs near me. So she was kind enough to give her lamb a little haircut, and she sent me these samples in the mail. So I said, I'd seen pictures of her lamb. I said, oh, send me some of the white wool and some of the black wool. And so these are those pictures there. And then the lower ones are pictures of the fabric. So next is looking at polyester, which is a microfiber, which is kind of turned into being a problem because it doesn't decompose, as we're finding now out in our oceans. So I cut a little tiny piece of a blanket on the edge, and I want to cut a hole in my blanket and put the little fuzz there, and then just sandwich it with the tape and capture the images. And they're comparing and contrasting what you're looking at. There's lots of different ways you could organize your digital content here for kids, depending on what you want your outcome to be. I don't have any formal lessons written now with the microfibers, but I'm definitely working on that for next school year, because I think that this would be a good way to tie in some things that kids could do with distance learning before we get the okay to return to face-to-face instruction. So even though I don't have a way to capture, well, that I know of, my washing machine water, I do have lint that comes in the dryer, and we all have that. So comparing and contrasting and looking and seeing, like, when I look at and I recognize the microscopic fiber of the material, can I recognize that in the lint? And just investigating and researching how these things from our homes are getting out into the environment. So again, I just think that these ideas are easy for kids to explore, and accessible at home, and hopefully easy to tie in across the grade levels. So that kind of wraps up my 5 ways to Foldscope in your classroom, starting with the makerspace, sending them home with kids and having them bring back or share with you digitally, depending on if you're going to be in face-to-face or distance learning. And then kind of merging those ideas with the science standards, project-based learning, and citizen science, all kind of like launched from Foldscoping. That kind of wraps it up.
All right, that was great. Thank you so much,
Thank
Amy.
you.
We can take questions now. What we'd like to do for this time is to use the chat for you to pose your questions, and then Amy can read those and answer them. So if you have a question for her, just type that into the chat window and we'll get to answer it. Or maybe you were so good at explaining everything, there's no question.
I don't know.
It was great seeing everybody online today. We have 18 of us. Several of our other super users are on, and some other folks that I haven't seen on before. All right, Lax has a question. He's typing it. Or do you want to ask it out loud? Maybe that's what you mean.
Sorry, I think it's easier for me to ask a question because I'm pretty. I have fat fingers and my it messed up my spelling. So apologies.
No,
actually, that was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. I mean, you know, I'm not an educator of kids, but I really am very interested in seeing how these things, you know, how it pans out in the end, you know, in the long run. But one of the things that I wish you could sort of elaborate upon is that how much preparation does it take for you when you're making such material, say, for a classroom environment? And, you know, I know that it depends on what kids you're teaching, but generally, what do you keep in mind when you're trying to convey something to these kids? And what are some of the key, you know, points you try to take into account when you're developing such material?
Well, to be honest, I feel like even though I've been a teacher for a really long time, to shift my thinking so that you're here where we are, the science lessons are kind of launched off this idea of phenomena. So when I put together the lessons that I did on pollen and pollinators and on plant cells, I needed to find good phenomenon, but I needed to understand what can be classified as phenomenon. Like, and I send something out into the world and then like, well, maybe that's not really very phenomenal. So to launch and get your kids thinking, questioning, and then being able to have them formulate their own questions on like why they're looking at this and why they're looking at that, and getting them to think. So I used I wrote the lessons, and I actually had some lessons that were not very good. And when I went to try to do them, I'm like, this doesn't work in the classroom because you're stopping and starting. You might run out of time in a class period. So I organized it so that it could kind of be in smaller chunks. Like maybe we only did phenomenon one day, and then we look at what are we looking at. Then we have to read about it because the kids have to use some resource or research. So I have to find good articles that will work for them. It might be from our science curriculum. It might just be like from an online resource. And then have some other way that the kids can collaborate, that they can either digitally or face-to-face talk about what they're thinking, building a claim, stating a claim, looking for evidence, and then having reasoning. So kind of the lessons fall with that. And then lots of visuals with videos. I like to use lots of videos that connect to a science idea that's not too broad. So that's like when I was working on the stomata, just understanding like what's the function of that one part of the leaf cell. And then from there, like branching out into like the carbon cycle, like how that's all interconnected. So it starts small and then gets more complex. I didn't get through all these lessons this year with my class because our school closed in the middle of March. So now I'm redesigning them on how I can do them through a distance learning model. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that was very useful, yeah, to hear about. Thank you.
Okay. So Jade typed a question into the chat window.
Okay, so a little bit about the Asian citrus psyllid. I worked on this project, and actually when I first heard about it from my other colleague, I really didn't know that much about it. But growing up where I live, you've seen the government yellow sticky traps, like it's something you see everywhere, and you are not supposed to touch those. And I knew, like, I don't have citrus in my yard, my neighbors do, but I didn't want to like go poking around in their yard. So I reached out to Dr. Beth Grafton Cardwell and took her a Foldscope and met with her a couple years ago. There is a University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources lab here, fortunately, about 15 miles where I live, where they have acres of areas where they study citrus science and other things that we grow in this region. So I brought her the Foldscope and I said, you have got to see this. This is so amazing. What can I do as a teacher to use what's happening to educate our community and our kids? Because kids live in homes, and then the idea is that the kids go home and talk to their parents about it and go outside and check their trees. And if they happen to have what they recognize as that Asian citrus psyllid, that they would call the 1-800 number. So Dr. Beth Grafton Cardwell said, I could make you some slides. So she makes me the slides, and she decided what wings would be in the slide library because of how different and unique each wing is. So the key is that kids can visually recognize the wing of the psyllid. So no, I don't take anything off the traps. She makes me the sets of the slide library. And then what I would do in my presentations when I would present to teachers and teach them is that I had gotten a special agricultural grant to buy Foldscopes. And then I would give a teacher a Foldscope that came to my session, tell them about the Asian citrus psyllid to educate teachers who would hopefully maybe use that lesson as well. And then give them a set of the slide library. So I have about maybe 5 or 6 sets left that if you're interested in teaching that, you could message me and I could get you a set of those slides.
But I think the question too was, when it finally does get to the student, how do they trap? Do they just create their own trap to get one, or no? In their own yard?
No. I have let me go back. I don't know if I could go back. I have, hang on one second. This picture right here, these are the there's 4 microscopic slides, and they're prepared, that she prepares them with. I've never had a kid trap a psyllid, although I'm assuming they could, but I wouldn't necessarily want to encourage that in the event that they, you know, captured it and then moved it, which is, we're under quarantine, at different levels of quarantine for moving citrus and any vegetation that's on your citrus, especially your backyard citrus. There's a lot of government regulations about transporting citrus. So it'd just be a matter of them in class being able to recognize the wing of the psyllid through a series of lessons that we learned about the psyllid. And then on this right here, this is a bookmark that I sent home with the kids. And when they scan this QR code, because also the idea was that if kids take the bookmark home and they can scan that with their cell phones, they would then help to educate their parents that this video shows on that bookmark, and it explains the problem that we're having. And Dr. Mark Hoddle was kind enough to make this video specifically for kids. So he's addressing it to kids and what they should do if they recognize the psyllid on their trees.
Great. All right, lots of people saying good job. QR code's a great idea, said Jay. Any other questions for Amy? Looks like we're good to go. Well, I want to say, oh, do you find that students are good at using this Foldscopes at home?
Okay, so what happened was when my school closed, the last trimester, it was like basically we were 1 week into the last trimester of school, and I was just starting to move into my life science standards. Just the way the curriculum is sequenced, the first part of the year was all physical science. So I was struggling to figure out how to get Newton's laws into a Foldscope. So I was just waiting until the spring. So when our school closed, we didn't know until after school was out. So I didn't have the opportunity for my students to take their Foldscopes home. And then with all the restrictions on student contact, it was just not going to work out. But starting this school year, I will be sending Foldscopes home. We're not going to be able to fold them together. And I'm starting the year with life science standards. So I will let everybody know how it goes. I'm anticipating that it's going to be extremely successful. I have several students where I teach, we teach multiple grade levels. So I have several students who are pretty proficient at foldscoping and folding them up. My kids are a little older, 7th and 8th grade. So, and then what they can't figure out, we'll be able to connect through Zoom. So I'm crossing my fingers on the distance learning part and looking forward to overcoming some challenges that we might come across.
We have had quite a few teachers have them at home during this time. So I haven't gotten a lot of feedback personally. I don't know if other people have heard, but it is a thing that people are realizing, you know, it's something they can do during this lockdown time. They can have their kids actually do science at home using Foldscopes. Okay, well, thank you again, Amy. It was a great presentation. So good to hear from a teacher of younger children, how you integrated into the class. I think I personally am amazed at how much you can do with these resources, and that it's integrated into this level, this 6th, 7th grade. How sophisticated you get even at that level with the science.
You know, I just, I think that when I I found the Foldscope by accident because I was looking for pictures of insect wings. And I was writing some curriculum about the Asian citrus psyllid for this project that I was working on a few years ago. And I came across the Foldscope website because people had posted various insect wing pictures. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. And that's where I got the idea to use the wing of the psyllid. And then it just kind of like, I feel like maybe I started at something that was a little bit more complex to integrate it in. But if you kind of start maybe with the fibers and the fabrics, so many pieces of, you know, a K-8 curriculum could fit in. Or even if you read an article or a story, it would be easy to fit that in. So I just think it's going to be amazing what kids produce for us and what they discover year after year working with Foldscopes. It's going to be exciting.
I think so too. Okay, Cynthia said, is there a way we can find your pollination and other lectures? Do you have other talks that you've given that are available to the public?
I think the best thing would be, I think what I did today kind of summarizes how I've been using Foldscopes in the past few years. And one question I got a lot was, you know, like the lesson plans. So Foldscope did just recently come out with lesson plans. And I have read them, and those lesson plans, even though I think, you know, kind of like geared in middle school science, you could definitely get some ideas to go up or down in your grade level, or have it be, you know, a little more simpler or a little bit more complex. But I would definitely look at the Foldscope lesson plans. And then the ones that I've done on the pollen and pollinators, the plant cells, and then the invasive species, I have a link for them that I could add to this slide deck, and just link. You could just have everything right on this slide deck here.
Okay.
I don't really have anything where I taught, you know, did like a video presentation.
Yeah, so if you could add that and send it to me, then I will post the slide deck alongside the video once I post the video of this.
Oh, okay, because I have each lesson, and then just feel free to, you know, modify my ideas. The money that I've used to purchase my Foldscopes and supplies have come from different grants. So you just let me know how it works with you, and how you are able to use it or change it if the way I wrote it doesn't work for your grade level.
Great. Well, thank you again. I will call this meeting to a close, and I'll be posting this content on our YouTube channel shortly. When I get the final slide set, I'll put that up there as well. And so if those of you who've joined today, if you have other friends that are interested in this topic, you can then point them to that. Thank you again, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming today.
We'll see everybody next week for our next Foldscope workshop. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for helping me.
Oh, you're welcome.